This video is going to review how to switch between standard form, which is given here, and y equals mx plus b, or slope intercept form, and how to write the equation of a line parallel or perpendicular. Okay, so we are used to our slope intercept form, where m represents our slope and our b is our y-intercept. Okay, but if you notice, standard form is not set up that way. Standard form looks like this. It's ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are just constants. They're just numbers. And looking at it this way, you don't necessarily know what the slope is. And that's what's so great about slope intercept form, is we can look at it and know exactly that the number in front of x is my slope. So how can we, or what can we do to change that slope intercept form? How can we change that formula or that equation from standard form, where we can look at it and we don't know what the slope is, to our slope intercept form, where we can identify the slope? Okay, and to do that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to solve the equation for y. Okay, so here I have, I'll use number 14 as our first example. We have x minus 3y equals 18. Okay, so if you notice, slope intercept form has y equals. So that's what I have to solve for. So when we're solving literal equations, the thing we want to solve for stays where it is, and we have to move everything else. Okay, so that means I got to get this x on the opposite side of the equal sign. So what I have is negative 3y is equal to negative x plus 18. And to solve for y, I have to divide by negative 3. And when you divide by negative 3, you have to divide both the x and the 18 by 3. Okay, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So that means dividing both x and 18 by negative 3. Okay, when we do that, I get my y equals. Don't forget that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So this just becomes x over 3, or how you would typically see it is there's a 1 in front of that x, so we can write it as 1/3 x. And then positive 18 divided by a negative 3 gives me a negative 6. Okay, so that is how we can convert any standard form equation into y equals mx plus b. Okay, so now looking at this, I can tell that my slope is a positive 1/3. And then of course we can graph or write an equation for any line parallel or perpendicular to that equation. But I also wanted to show you something else. Same concept, obviously, but I'm going to solve just my plain old literal equation. Okay, so if I do ax plus by equals c, still want to solve for y, because the goal is to determine what the slope and y-intercept are. So I'm going to do the exact same steps I did with my example 14. I'm going to subtract ax from both sides, leaving me with by equals negative ax plus c. And remember, we have to divide everything by b to get y by itself. So this is going to give me negative Sorry. So y equals negative a divided by bx plus c over b. Okay, so what does that give you? Well, that tells you that, so this is our slope intercept form, or our y equals mx plus b form. Let me write that over top. So y equals mx plus b. Okay? Now, if you have been introduced to the transitive property, we know that if there is any two things that are equal to the same thing, then they're equal to each other. And you'll notice both equations are both equal to y. So therefore, they're equal to one another. So I can say that m is equal to negative a over b. And I can say that my y-intercept, now this is going to get confusing because they're both labeled b, but the blue b represents the y-intercept. And this b, my black b, is just a constant. It's a number. Okay, so my y-intercept is equal to c over b. Okay, so what does that, how can I use that? Well, instead of going through the steps of solving the entire equation and putting the entire equation in y equals mx plus b, like I did with my first example here, number 14, I can take this new information that I just determined and look at number 16, and I can say, okay, well, in my standard form, the 5 is A, the 8 is B, and the 32 is C. So what that means is if I take the opposite, that's what the negative represents. If I take the opposite of A, so positive 5 becomes negative 5, and I put it over B, which is 8, that is my slope. And my y-intercept is going to be my constant c at negative 32 divided by the constant in front of y, which is negative 8, and negative divided by negative is a positive, and 32 divided by 8 is 4. So 4 would be my y, represents my y-intercept. So these little formulas here can allow you to determine what the slope and y-intercept are without having to solve for y. And I'll show, and I'll just to prove it to you, I will take 5x minus 8y equals negative 32. Okay, so let's solve for y. Need to subtract 5x from both sides, giving me 8, negative 8y is equal to negative 5x minus 32. And when I divide by a negative 8 on both sides, I get y is equal to a positive 5/8x. Now, if you remember, I just told you that the slope should be negative 5 over 8, but What I didn't account for was that this 8 was negative, naturally negative. See, I didn't, when I substituted 8 in, I didn't I didn't include the negative, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that just shows you got to be careful with your signs. And then 30 and negative 32 divided by negative 8 is 4. So that's the full equation from standard form to y-intercept form. But I just thought this was interesting and a fun little fact that you can always remember.